our thing, man. I just find it's wonderful.
Oh. Right, Matthieu.
So, talking about dirt and feedback, giving feedback, and just something that I've been doing for the last 2 years really about marking. Now, I think we are all at the, I think most of us agree about marking that is really tedious and long job that takes hours and hours of our time. I do have to admit sometimes nodding off to sleep when I'm marking books it's not the most interesting thing to do really, always writing, at least in our subjects, always writing the same kind of comments. For us it would be, for example, at Key Stage 3 or even Key Stage 4, talking about students developing their answers, giving opinions, or when they are giving opinions, justifying their opinions. And when we mark a set of books, so you've got 30 books, and at least 20, the same 20 comments will come back over and over again. So last year I decided to see if we could be a bit smarter about it, see if I could save some time really without penalizing the students, not having, well, saving time, but having less quality marking.
Oh, sorry.
So, came with the idea of, well, not only myself, it was something that at my old school some people had started doing, and then reading on the internet about blogs and stuff like that, of things happening already in different subjects. And I decided to do it for MFA. So we are just giving codes, instead of just marking and writing these comments in every single book. Because, for example, most of the time I will probably say that people have to write longer sentences using connectives. And it takes quite a lot of time writing these 25 times in each book. So instead, I'm writing codes instead of those comments. It's just following the principles by Ron Berger about having specific, kind, helpful comments. Well, the other way around really, kind, specific, and helpful comments. So I'm trying to be as kind as possible. Sometimes it's difficult, but you have to. So by saying why I think that piece of work is good. So this is where you've got arrows going above target, below targets, or at targets, and then the reason why I think that piece of writing is good. So it's going to be a letter, could be a combination of different letters if I like different things about that piece of writing, and that saves me quite a lot of time in terms of writing. Then it's just identifying where the gap is in their learning and knowing where we can improve. So maybe it will be about using connectives. So in that case, I will write something saying to improve, normally in target language, #1, and that will be that they need to improve on their use of connectives. So this is a document that all the students have. I think there are different ways you can get around that. If you don't want to spend a fortune in printing, you could just have one set per class, laminated, that's going to last for more than a year hopefully, and keep that in your classroom. Or if you're not too worried about budget and money, then you could have just A5 piece of paper, stick that in the student's book, and every time you give them dirt, they can then refer to that during the lesson, you give them that dirt time. So, and then you've got something about reflection. The way I use it, I use more than one code every time, so there is most of the time more than one reason why it's good, and quite often more than one way to improve. I don't tend to put more than 2, otherwise it gets a bit too much for them. And then you can ask a question, so this is a list of questions. Now I did that thinking, that was with a colleague last year, we just sat down together and we thought about all the comments that were constantly coming back in the books. We made our bank of comments, and then we decided to just put these on that piece of paper. Now that doesn't mean that you can't put any other comments. You can still write a comment if it's something very specific to that student or that piece of work. Instead of using the codes, then you can still write something different. Now, this is what it looks like in a student's book. So during DIRT, as soon as I've finished marking that set of books, when they get their books back, I give them DIRT that is going to last, depends, sometimes it can go from 15 minutes to about almost a lesson, really. So this in green is my initial writing. That was a piece of writing that this student did. I just put here that it was above target, and the reason why I thought it was above target, that was really good piece of writing, so I could have made a really long list. And then to improve, I thought that she needed to use more complex language, so that was #5. So when they get their books back, the first thing they have to do is to change these codes by the actual sentences. Otherwise, if anybody's going to check your books, if we have an offset inspection or anything, if they just see codes, they might not really understand what's going on. So that's very important. First step is for them to change the codes into the actual words. And then, what I think, so that's what it looks like, and then, because I was a bit, that's something that I don't really like, when I ask them to comment on my feedback, then most of the time this is something that they will end up writing. Thank you, I will try next time. I don't think it's good enough. What we want is them to improve now, not next time, because next time could be in 4 weeks' time. So I want them to do it now. So this is why then we have the hashtag, which is the improve, the way to improve. It's linked to a task that I will display on the whiteboard, on the interactive whiteboard in the classroom during the DIRT. And then, if case for that student, she had #5, so then it says use more complex structures, and then there is a task for her. Produce some complex sentences using words such as, and then just some guidelines here in French and Spanish. So they have a task to do during the DIRT. And this is what she's done. Here, she's written it in red, and so she's improved. She's followed my advice, telling her to use more complex language. She's changed some words to avoid repetition and did it in red, so it's quite obvious using the ink policy. And then when I check her book again, then I can just start with saying that it's much improved. So my feedback has been effective. I told her that the gap in her learning was about not using enough complex language. She's done it, and that's it. The gap is done. One thing that I realized after that, you can see that about the QR code here. After a while, I realized that it was a bit, sometimes for some students, it's a bit quite vague when you just tell them, use more complex language. And for us, it seems obvious. You know that it's at that page in your book, you know exactly where to go. That's the case for some students, but not for all of them, fortunately. So what I do is I just put a sticker which is linked to the hashtag that I give them. So this one was about complexity in Spanish because she had to improve on her complexity. So those are the QR codes I've done about, I think there are about 8 per language, about different things, different aspects of learning language. This is just a website that I've done. So they are using their phone during DIRT. They can use their phone, scan the QR code. It's going to send them to this website, and it will send them, so that was complex structured in Spanish, it will send the student, when they scan it, it sends them here. Here. So they have a whole range of complex structures in Spanish that they can use during DIRT. So they can be on their phone and just write with the things that they could use to improve that piece of writing, linked to the way to improve that I had identified during the marking.
All right.
The QI, that's the thing that took quite a lot of time, the setting up that website. But I think you don't even need to set up a website. We all know lots of resources from TES or wherever. You can just compile all of them, and then making the QR code takes about half a second. It's just in the case of printing them ready. But
Where do you get them from, the QR codes? How do you...
if you just Google QR code generator, it can generate for any web page or anything on the internet, it will generate a QR code. It takes really not even a second.
Does anybody else use them?
Not here.
You have Russell.
Yeah, I use them a little bit, IT, yeah. They're very straightforward to do.
Yeah, I'm not really good with IT, and it's something I managed to do for. And there it gives, it's a bit gimmicky maybe, but it gives them, they like that. They like to get their phones out, and it's using it for a good purpose. I did it on Monday with my year 11, and one of the boys was, oh yeah, that's awesome. But it's great, you are just improving on your work in Spanish, so yeah.
Can I just ask, once they've scanned that in their phone, do they have can they go back to that, or do they need to scan it again to go back to it, or is it,
I suppose
is there
it's
a
a
link?
bookmark.
It's always linked. So if, at any time,
Yeah.
as soon as they've got it in their book, even if it's 6 months later, they
Yeah.
can still come back. That the website is still there, the link is still there.
Yes, no, I was just thinking about whether it was just still on their phone, but
Yeah,
they
they can-
could bookmark
Russell,
it.
yeah.
They can save it as a favourite on their phone,
Yeah.
or it'll
Yeah.
be recent websites visited or
Yeah,
something, you can
yeah.
still get to it.
And I told them to write down the address, the website
Yeah.
in their book, so that at any time they can
Yeah.
just go and access it. All right, and that's about it. I was reading lately about workload and everything about marking. I think that could be a way forward to have, because they are thinking about us spending less time doing paperwork, etc. We should stop covering children's exercise books with lengthy comments, etc. I think this is probably a way forward. It has definitely cut down the amount of time I spend marking, but what I'm more happy with is that I don't think it has cut down on the quality of my marking. On the contrary, I think it's much more focused. I know exactly what I'm looking for in the marking. They know exactly what to do after they receive my comment. And then from Mary Myatt, the Ofsted inspector, I think that's quite interesting what she says. Too often what we see is feedback without any response, which is a bit like the thank you sir, I will do it next time. At least there is a response, but a response that's not really useful. So how can we be moving learning forward? The kid has ignored the feedback, not because they can't be bothered, but because they haven't been expected. I think it's just putting responsibility, feedback, all right, we give the feedback. It's their responsibility then to act upon it, and us making sure that we give them opportunities during our lessons to improve on the feedback that we get.
Do you think it has promoted any more sort of independence of you know, their responsibility, you say,
Yes, yeah.
to do that, but
I
actually...
think then because they have to write those symbols, it might be just symbolic, but they have to write them down. They appropriate themselves with the feedback. They understand exactly what you're saying. They have to read it first, because they need to write it. And then giving them the autonomy, the independence during terms to work on their draft, to improve their work, using the phone or using a paper copy of the website, because you don't have to. They don't have a phone, they can do it on a piece of paper. It gives them the independence and the autonomy of working.
So I think it's quite important, isn't it? I mean, I can see that cognitive process taking place. So that's really good. So what we have to work at is making sure that the actions we ask them to do, the activity that we ask them to do, is pertinent to that improvement. Now, for language, I can see how you work. We'd have to spend a bit of time, for example, in history, just say, okay, so how are you going to improve that? If we set dates, include dates in your work, which would be a code, easy enough.
Yeah.
They then have to refer back somewhere to find the dates when the rain was or when the rains were here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there are various activities like that we can do. So that would be a key to every subject, is getting the activity right, using the template that you've established. And that's where the brain power needs to be applied, which would then, as you say, rope them into improving their work.
Yeah.
Yeah. The red pens are working, aren't they?
They are, because then it makes it
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah.
At my previous school, we would ask them to highlight their improvement. We don't need the highlighters, they have the red pens. that's
Yeah, it's
obvious.
better because they can't highlight anything,
Yeah.
can they?
Uh-huh.
So they have to write something new. which is
Yeah.
good.
I think as well, you know, looking at it from an SEN point of view, sort of look and think, you know, there were some quite complex cognitive activities to do that, but you can differentiate it with, we've sort of looked at using symbols to mean something and so forth, but not from this perspective where they have to do, but I can see that you could use symbols which would, or you know, not such a range of informational questions, because usually there are a group of fundamental things there's an issue with. And I think you could use that, you could still use this with SEN kids, and it not look as if they're not receiving the same, but they've got perhaps more identifiable codes which they can quickly establish as opposed to
Yeah.
I think what you'll do is if you've got your 5 comments, you might, as a marking, only give them 1 or 2.
You would.
Yeah, certainly.
So you have your full range and just pick off the,
Yeah.
the 1
I
or
would.
2 that need to be focusing on their
Yeah.
particular. So you can actually differentiate your codes.
Just
can't you?
marking, yeah.
Definitely.
Actually, our codes, I've got, this is the one I used with Key Stage 4. I've got something similar for Key Stage 3. And actually with students who are not high achievers, I will tend to use 1 and 2 because they kind of follow the order of the levels, national maturity
Otherwise,
levels.
they're trying to interpret their marking as well as how they work. But no, I might be impressed with that. Very good.
Can everybody sort of think of, so Chris has already said it might be dates and history, for example, or it might be, you know, can everybody sort of almost visualise some that they would turn into codes that you would get the kids working on? And do you feel when you're marking, you're writing the same thing a certain number of times for every set of books or whatever you're marking? How long did it take to set up, Matthieu? You talked about getting together with another colleague and looking at common marking.
This took about an hour. This, because we knew exactly which comments we were using all the time. And it was just a case of not having too many of them.
Yeah,
Because, well, first we wanted it on 1 page.
yes.
And not to make it too confusing. Because then what will happen is that sometimes I will have to say something that's not on there. It's quite rare, but it happens at least once every set of book you mark. But then that's fine, it's only 1 comment that I need to write,
Yeah.
I can deal with that. But yeah, no, I think that took about an hour. We all know which comments we need to read.
It's nice that the thing they've got to write down is like on the girls' example, it's like an affirmative to use to do this, as opposed to me writing use proper nouns 20
I know,
times and
I
then
know.
say, give me an example of a proper noun
Exactly.
in this. But when they go, they'll say Hitler or Germany or something like that, and I've written all of that out, whereas
Yeah.
so I think it's really,
Thank you. Are people in your group, your TLC, trialling this or not? I know some of them.
It was very, we started talking about it
Yeah, I mean,
during your first
Yeah.
Yeah,
meeting.
and I think,
Right,
certainly in history we're
exactly.
looking at doing it, but we only just, it was a cursory first look, but yeah, it's excellent.
I've tried it.
Did you, Dan?
Yeah, yeah, it works, and brought some sanity back to marking. So thanks.
Hey, that's
Big
good.
thumbs up. Yeah.
That's great. That's a good comment to possibly end on. Matthieu, thanks ever so much. Thanks for
Alright.
everybody coming along.